This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com in review. What I'm looking at today is Masters of the Universe, Revelation, a new series that premiered Friday on Netflix. And if you grew up with the toys and watching the cartoons, you're familiar with He-Man, Man-at-Arms, Skeletor, and so on. Or if you've seen the 1987 movie starring Dolph Lundgren, you probably are aware of these characters. And with that knowledge, you knew very well that these characters would have the most difficult time in live action. And the 1987 movie was live action, and you saw how that went. Because the Mattel characters, the Masters of the Universe characters, are victims of their own success, in the sense that it was a toy line. It is a toy line, I should say. And the entire purpose was to appeal to young males. Let's say somewhere in a ballpark of 7 to 11 years old, somewhere in there. And the Masters of the Universe was successful in that. Though the problem was the way they were successful. Namely, they had characters so basic. Stinkor was a skunk man. Triclops was a dude with multiple eyes. And you get the drift. Figures deliberately designed for children in such a way that there's no ambiguity. There's no mystery. Skeletor, a dude with a skeleton head, designed in such a way that there is no ambiguity. That there is no mistaking who someone is based on the sound of their name. He-Man, a massive white dude, take that how you will. So these characters were so simplistic, deliberately simplistic, by the way. It wasn't an accident. And the problem that brings is that when one gets older, most of us, I can't say all, but I think a lot of us, begin to look for nuance, begin to seek out a level of sophistication in their media. Things that aren't quite so black and white. And He-Man suffered for that. And deservedly so. It was made for children. And to bring the 1987 movie into the scrum, if you will, it never quite made that transition. Another reason it didn't do very well is made by Canon Films. I wouldn't put them in the same area as Roger Corman in terms of producing schlock, but they're pretty up there. So this was a venture that, on many levels, was doomed to fail. That clarity I mentioned earlier works to the detriment now of Masters of the Universe in growing the audience for these figures. Conversely, something like Transformers works better. Optimus Prime, what does that mean beyond the name? You don't necessarily associate anything with it. It's malleable. It can be molded and shaped for a more modern audience. And that's what Hasbro did, much to their success. Master of the Universe, it's a harder job. And another problem is that oftentimes people who interpret these things don't give a damn about them. They're not fans of the material. And I don't care what anyone says about Zack Snyder, he doesn't give a damn about Superman. He doesn't. And it showed in the final product. I hear oftentimes of people saying, oh, he's a fan. Bullshit. He is not. And if he were, he'd better respect these characters. So that's a problem. The 1987 Masters of the Universe movie did not respect these characters made by people who, I'm willing to wager, didn't give a damn about said characters. It's a recipe for disaster. That brings us to Masters of the Universe Revelation, a new series that premiered on Netflix. And I was wondering if these characters could ever be interpreted in a way that not only makes sense, but that creates opportunities for growth, that makes you care about them. And Kevin Smith, Mark Bernardin, and the other writers and directors found the Rosetta Stone to do it. This works really well. Part of the reason it works really well is, well, there are quite a few reasons. One is the music by Bear McCreary is incredible. A lot of modern day cartoons are very electric in terms of their score. Lots of synthesizers. And there's nothing wrong with the synthesizer in and of itself. The problem is when that's the only thing that you hear. With Masters of the Universe Revelation, Bear McCreary sounds to me like he's using a whole orchestra for this. Actual instruments. It brings a drama and a strength to it. Keep in mind, McCreary is the composer of the soundtrack for Battlestar Galactica, the reboot, as well as many other things. And he has such an ear. This series sounds remarkable. Another thing that works in its favor is the animation style, which is to say, it's not quite like anime is typically done, and it's not anime, though it's just distinctive enough that it works really well, and it doesn't feel like it's copying anything. In fact, it reminds me of the animation for the old Flash Gordon cartoon series, before it began to show that they don't have any money. So that's refreshing. Though what really works is Kevin Smith, who is a story editor as well as the executive producer, manages to do something that few people who restart these franchises do. First off, he loves the material. Kevin Smith is like the ultimate fanboy. He clearly loves this stuff, and every frame of Masters of the Universe Revelation shows that love. He loves these characters, and he doesn't hold them in contempt, which is a problem with a lot of the people, from Joel Schumacher to Zack Snyder, bring to this a contempt of the material, so much so that they feel the need to change it, as opposed to just accepting it for what it is and building on that. And that's something that Kevin Smith does really well. He loves this stuff, and it shows. It's faithful to Masters of the Universe, but it's much more relevant than any Masters of the Universe could have ever been. There are literally references to Shakespeare's Julius Caesar in this series. There's a discussion of religion in this series. This series takes so many chances with this material in the sense that it raises it up. It makes it more relevant to a wider audience without, I think, losing the younger folk that's so important. In fact, this reminds me somewhat of The Simpsons, in the sense that for a child, they can get into it. It's great, it's funny. But The Simpsons was also very adult, and it had a lot of jokes that a child probably wouldn't understand. But that doesn't diminish their enjoyment. A strength of this interpretation of Masters of the Universe is that it doesn't make it an adult thing. Whatever you may think about Zack Snyder, he made Superman an adult thing. He took Superman away from children, and I think that's a terrible thing. Kevin Smith, with his reboot of Masters of the Universe, doesn't. Children could enjoy this because it has a lot for them. But conversely, adults can too, because it's talking about issues that are, for the most part, over the heads of children. And it does things with the Masters of the Universe mythos that really work excellently. For instance, in the original series, Prince Adam looked just like He-Man, which is what I call Clark Kent syndrome. Just putting on glasses shouldn't be enough to differentiate Clark Kent from Superman over enough time. Someone should eventually go, hey, he looks just like Superman. At some point, it should happen, but it never did. Conversely, with Masters of the Universe, someone should go, hey, Prince Adam kind of looks like He-Man. It never happened. It should have happened, though, because it's fairly obvious. But the thing is, as I said earlier, Masters of the Universe was made for children and to sell toys. Though, unfortunately, that has the effect of treating children as if they're stupid. So that's, I imagine, didn't help its audience as well. Though, with the revision, Prince Adam is significantly smaller than He-Man. He doesn't look like He-Man, except in a very superficial way. So, you remove that, and they become visually distinct entities all on their own. It's a little thing, but it's an important thing, especially if your goal is to expand your audience into adults. No one watching Masters of the Universe Revelation will likely go to themselves, why do people not recognize that Prince Adam looks just like He-Man? Because he doesn't. Not in this reimagining, and that is so perfect. Another strength are the voice acting in here. It is on a level that's just remarkable. Tony Todd, I gotta do a shout out for, plays Scareglow, and he's just remarkable, which reminds me, another thing that Kevin Smith does so well is that he adds layers to the Masters of the Universe world. He and his writers create different realms, and possibilities grow from those realms. So as I was saying, the voice acting is so good. Though Mark Hamill as Skeletor is also quite good, but if you listen to him, he drifts into Joker on occasion. He also voiced Joker on Batman the Animated Series. So that was actually mildly irritating, and that's the problem with it. It wasn't consistent. Well, it shouldn't have been there at all, frankly. And I wish Kevin Smith or someone had caught that in the line reading. But that's a minor quibble. When all is said and done, Masters of the Universe Revelation, as far as building to the point where we can get a live action Masters of the Universe, is just about perfect and as good as it's going to get. It is just wonderful. And another thing I have to mention is that the first series only lasts 5 episodes. This is wonderful because, especially with something like animation, if you crank out too many episodes, what you're running the risk of is the quality of the animation dropping, because someone has to draw that stuff, and it takes time. And the more they have to do by a certain period of time, the more quality is going to suffer. In this instance, there are only 5 episodes in a season. It works. It's beautiful. And I get a feeling part of the reason why is that the artists aren't forced to do too much. It has a very painterly, leisurely quality to it, which it should have. For instance, I loved Johnny Quest growing up, but my God, that was some of the chintziest animation. Or go back even further, the Marvel superheroes cartoons, Hulk, Iron Man, Namor, I love those, but animation was literally as if someone had cut out a comic book character and just moved it little bits at a time. It was not good. Though rushing animation gives you results not quite like that, obviously, but nonetheless results that aren't that great. With these relatively short seasons, my hope is the animation remains strong, and if the first season is any judge, that's likely to be the case. This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com in review. Do you agree, disagree? Let me know down below. And as usual, consider a like or a follow.